Are there marketing tasks that need to be done for your company, but you just don't have the time or enough people to help? Do you hate managing social media? Are you curious about starting a podcast? This episode is hosted by the founder of GetLeverage.com, Nick Sonnenberg. Leverage is a premier marketing platform that pairs you with a team of experts for any big or small project that you want to outsource.
Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. Today I have a special guest, my friend Steve Olsher. Steve and I met recently at Traffic and Conversion. We were on Pete Vargas's yacht party. We were sitting next to each other having a good conversation. And Steve is the world's foremost expert on reinvention, helping people figure out their what. And we're going to talk much more about this, but Steve is a super interesting guy. He has his own conference all about podcasts and how to really be successful in the podcast space. He's the chairman and founder of liquor.com and just a whole bunch of other things. You have your own podcast. Is that right, Steve?
Actually, two podcasts. We've got Reinvention Radio, and then we've also got Beyond Eight Figures. So yeah, two of them.
All right. Well, I want to hear more about that and just an overall badass. So thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the invite.
So tell me a little bit about your background and story. How did you get to where you're at? And, liquor, I remember when we were sitting next to each other, it was interesting, your story about liquor.com. So maybe you could share that as well.
Yeah. Well, how much time do we have? So lifelong entrepreneur. I mean, literally from the time I was old enough to pick up a rake and try to move some leaves around or grab a shovel and, just shovel sidewalks and driveways. Pretty much always been wired as an entrepreneur, right? So that led to lots of interesting things over the years. I DJ'd for a number of years and built up a pretty decent following. And when I was 19, I actually had an idea to open up my own nightclub. But obviously being 19, I mean, I knew it couldn't be an alcohol-driven club, right? So I had grown up in Chicago. And in Chicago, as a teenager, I used to hang out at these, teenage type dance clubs, right? So non-alcoholic clubs. There were a few of them in Chicago that were pretty fun. And I was thinking, maybe there would be a good opportunity for me to open up something similar where I had been going to school. I went to school at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. And, it was an interesting trek there. Spent more time behind the DJ, turntables than I did behind the books, but that's a different conversation. But I knew that the local area, the kids there really didn't have a lot to do. So I thought maybe we could open up a non-alcoholic club that would cater to the teenagers. And then because we wouldn't serve booze, we wouldn't be subject to the liquor laws, which meant that we wouldn't have to close at 1:30. So if we closed down and cleaned up after the teenagers left, and then we could stay open as late as we wanted for those who were older and still wanted to stay out, right? So that was my first real entrepreneurial endeavor, opening up what ultimately became the Funky Pickle, non-alcoholic nightclub, and catered to teenagers from around 8 to 11:30, and then closed down and cleaned up and reopened at midnight for those 18 and over and stayed open until 4, 5, 6 in the morning. So that was the first real entrepreneurial endeavor. And that opened right before my 20th birthday. So it's taken me down a lot of different paths since then, as you mentioned, ironically enough, liquor.com, and I've done real estate development to the tune of almost $100 million in real estate development over the years. And you mentioned the conference, the New Media Summit, and put a book on the New York Times list, and the podcast. So yeah, man, lots of fun things going on in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah. So your book is What is the What, right? And that's really
What is your what? Interestingly enough, there is actually a book called What is the What?
Oh, interesting.
There's something like that. There's like an African, I think it's the Lost Boys of Sudan. One of those kids wrote that book, which is interesting. And that's a hell of a story too. But yeah, the one mine is What is your what?
Gotcha. And that's really tied to you and your expertise in reinvention, yeah?
It's really designed to help people figure out the one amazing thing that they were really born to do, and born out of necessity. In terms of, this is a question that I've really had my entire adult life, which is how am I naturally wired to excel, and what is it that that I can do to have meaningful impact on the world, right? So trying Myers-Briggs, what color's your parachute, strengths finders, all those things, most of them just left me with more questions than answers. And I figured there's got to be an easier way to do something here where people can hit the ground running and actually start making money doing something that puts fire in their soul.
Interesting. So, I mean, we don't have time. Obviously, people should just read your book to learn more about this. But could you just give us like a really quick very high level overview of kind of what is your framework? Like, how do you get people to realize, your what?
Yeah. So the what is your what framework, and that is actually the exact terminology that I use, is comprised of 3 specific pieces. And we do discovery. It's more of almost like a workbook, really, because we leave space for you to write in the book and, and all that, right? So it's really a journey of discovery to figuring out the 3 pieces of the what is your what framework, which together then make up what I would call your what. So the first piece is your core gift. And if you see the cover of the book, you'll see we only really have one graphic element on there, which is the DNA strand. And so your core gift, I believe, is really in your DNA. It's a part of who you just inevitably are. I mean, it's like we can live in denial about how we're naturally wired to excel, but ultimately it's there if we choose to tap into that. So there's lots of different core gifts that people have. As an example, a core gift could be something like teaching. It could be communicating. It could be healing. It could be enrolling or protecting or entertaining, etc. And so that is going to remain static throughout your entire life. How you manifest that or bring that to fruition can definitely vary over time, which is why just understanding, how you're naturally wired to excel, what your core gift is, isn't enough, right? It's like if you picture a tripod, I liken the 3 pieces of the what is your what framework to how a tripod would stand. I mean, you take out any one leg and of course the whole thing topples over. So just knowing your core gift is a great step in the right direction, but it's just not enough. So the second piece of the what is your what framework is having clarity on the primary vehicle that you will use to share that gift. And so as an example, if your core gift turns out to be healing, you're a natural born healer, then perhaps the primary vehicle that you would use to share that gift would be something like massage, right? Something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And that's all well and good. But again, like a tripod, you still need the third leg, because the third piece of the puzzle, the third leg of the framework, if you will, is really understanding who the people are that you are most compelled to serve. And so it's the combination of the gift, the vehicle, and the people that make up the what is your what framework. And once you have clarity on how you're naturally wired to excel, how you're going to share that gift, and who you're most compelled to serve, now you can begin creating relevant products, programs, and services that fill their specific needs and begin immersing yourself in that world. So that's the what is your what framework.
And the people that you serve, it could even just be 0 people, right? Like you're what I would imagine, like some of these mathematicians that go into the forest to solve like really hard math problems, like, they're serving just themselves basically. They don't have to massage other people or whatever, but I guess
tough to make a living that way.
Yeah.
Unless you're living off the fruits and nuts of the land, I guess, then you could do it. But ultimately, even the mathematician, I mean, that theory of relativity or whatever it is needs to be implemented and picked up and marketed and shared by someone. So, yeah, I mean, look, even Einstein made a lot of money with his inventions, right? I mean, right. So, although made a lot more money after he was dead, but that's a different story. But, reality is you absolutely should be paid extraordinarily well for what comes as naturally to you as breathing. I mean, I'm not one of those people that'll tell you to succumb to life as a starving artist simply because you're compelled to draw.
Right.
I mean, if Jordan can get paid millions, I guess it's a bad example because in comparison, he didn't make jack compared to what the kids make today. But, if Durant can put the ball in this round thing into this cylinder and get paid, hundreds of millions of dollars a year to do that. Not saying it's on the pay grade for most of us, but why should you have to take any less than that if your what is equally powerful?
So other than the book, do you have video courses or workshops that help teach people your framework?
Well, we give away the book for free. So and I don't know if you want me giving out the site or not, but I mean, we can talk about that later.
How do we get a free book?
Sure. Just go to whatisyourwhat.com. So whatisyourwhat.com. And what you'll see there, and this plays into your next question. We give away the whole book. People are like, why would you give away the whole book? Well, because my goal in life is really to help people, as many people as possible, discover, share, and monetize their what. So we do give away the whole book for free. We did put it on the New York Times list in 2013. But now we give away the whole book. And so in answer to your question, if you do decide to go to whatisyourwhat.com, pick up the book, you'll then have an option to pick up a hardcover copy of the book, and we'll ship that book to you for free. You just pay for shipping and handling. But then the next piece, the one-time only offer, if you will, is to grab the Reinvention Workshop online course, which is actually a video course, right? That's ostensibly a third version of the same resource. I mean, ebook, hardcover book, and then the Reinvention Workshop online course, third version of essentially the same resource, because it's just me taking a room full of people through the process of discovering their what and teaching them how to share and monetize it. So that's the Reinvention Workshop online course.
Interesting. I have a new book and course coming out as well, and kind of similar idea. I just want people to have it, but the book is going to be, very easy to access, and then throughout the book, it's to try to get people to do the course.
Yeah. And just to follow up with that, I mean, yes, there are other things that I do as well from a product standpoint. I mean, really the core product of helping people share and monetize their what once they know what it is would be more of our year-long guidance, accountability, and done for you type programs where we put everything in place to help people share and monetize their what, right? So there of course are more things on the long tail there. Yeah.
I mean, super valuable stuff. I mean, if you can make money doing stuff that you get joy from, it's very aligned with my mission with Leverage, which is I want people to spend time doing what they're uniquely best at or things that they get joy from, and figure out ways to not do the rest. So it's an outsourcing platform. So get off your plate all the stuff that you don't like doing or shouldn't be doing. But similar alignment in that respect.
Yeah.
So talk about liquor.com, because I remember I don't know if you want to share how much that URL costs, but I mean, that was pretty memorable number. What are you doing with that, and how did that come about?
Yeah, man. So after the club imploded, which of course any venture run by a 20-year-old it's going to implode at some point. So it ran its course for a couple of years there. What did I do? I went back home to Chicago to work with my mom and my grandfather. My grandfather had started Foremost Liquor Stores in Chicago. We actually had stores in New York and other places, California and so on at the peak there. But there was a very small piece of the family business, which was called Foremost Liquor by Wire. And basically Liquor by Wire is the same thing as FTD for flowers. So you're in California, you wanted to send a bottle of Dom Perignon to your attorney in New York who just closed a deal for you. You would call us, our local retailer would deliver it. And that was Liquor by Wire, right? So it was basically just like FTD, except for wine, champagne, spirits, and gift baskets. So when I came into the family business, that was just a very small piece of the puzzle. I mean, I think maybe we were doing like, $6 to $10 a year in total sales, but I thought that it had a lot of potential. So the first thing that I did was start tackling that and seeing what we could do with that concept. Launched a catalog, and then in 1993, when AOL and CompuServe and Prodigy and some of these types of platforms came to be fairly popular, I decided let's launch a store on CompuServe's electronic mall to really get more visibility and eyeballs, eardrums, and sales under our belt there in this electronic commerce medium that we really knew very little about at that juncture. But that was 93, man, when we launched on CompuServe's electronic mall with a store for Liquor by Wire. And
that's pretty early days.
Pretty early days. And then in 95, we built one of the first 500 fully functional e-commerce sites. And as things began to turn along pretty good, an opportunity came up in 98 to pick up the liquor.com domain. was like, man, I don't know. It's a lot of money, right? This guy was squatting on the domain, but I thought it had potential. I thought if we picked it up, it could really help move our business forward. And we negotiated out the deal to pick up liquor.com and bourbon.com in 1998 for all of $7,500.
Man, what a
yeah,
what a good deal. I mean, how many millions is that thing worth now?
Well, I can answer that. And I can answer that, and I'll finish the story here. But but at the time, I will tell you, it felt like a stretch. $7,500 was a lot of money. Back in '98, that's like, what is that, 3 million today or something like that? I mean, it was a lot of money back in '98, right? And we're a small business, and it's like, yeah, do we do it? Do we not do it? But ended up pulling the trigger. That definitely helped us to grow for sure. Not as big or as fast as you might have thought. But by 2000, we were doing a few $1 million a year in revenue. And actually more like 99, we were doing a few $1 million a year in revenue. Because in the middle part of 99, we started going down this path of, let's take this company public. This was you got to remember, dude, this was at the time where ideas on napkins were basically being funded for millions of dollars, right? I mean, it was just .com hysteria. And so here we were with a real company, lots of sales, all the heavy lifting was done, everything was in place. We just needed more people to know we existed. So filed the S1 in March of 2000 after doing the whole dog and pony show, going on the road show, bringing in these lettered saviors that Wall Street said we needed, the CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, WTFs, like all these folks we were supposedly needing. And I even signed away my management rights to the company because just literally blinded by the .com light. I figured, hey, let's take this thing public. I'm going to make millions and that'll be that. So unfortunately in March of 2000, that's when everything blew up. If you remember, that's when NASDAQ just absolutely cracked under the pressure of the .com bubble, and we weren't able to go public. And since I had signed away my management rights and the CEO that we had brought in and I didn't really see eye to eye, I walked away. I walked away from everything that I had built for the last number of years, and even walked away from the domain and got into real estate development because that was the next big opportunity. And did that for a number of years. But in 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, I was actually out walking the dog, and we got the Wall Street Journal delivered to the house. That's when they actually had newspapers. Those were things that used to exist. But I'm walking the dog, and I'm reading the cover article on the Wall Street Journal. And the cover article is talking about how domain name prices are approaching pre-bubble valuations. I was like, man, I wonder whatever happened to that domain, because I never signed away my rights to it. I just walked away from the company. And I'll keep this brief here, but I ended up tracking down the domain to a guy in the country of Panama. And we got into some conversations and just basically wanted to find out how he had come to get the domain when I knew I hadn't signed away my rights to the domain. And after about 6 months of back and forth, he finally said, you know what, I've decided I'm just going to give you back your domain. And that was basically Christmas Eve of 2006. And sure enough, he gave me back the domain, and I subsequently put it up for sale. There were a number of offers that came in on it. The highest one was $4.25 million.
And this was just a gift back? Didn't ask for anything?
Yep, didn't ask for anything. $4.25 million, and the buyer ended up making the first few payments and then bailed on the rest. So I kept the money and I kept the domain and ended up putting together a team out of San Francisco to run the business. And they've been running it since 2009. I've got no active day-to-day with it. I'm a shareholder, not even a majority shareholder at this point, but I am still a shareholder, fairly large shareholder of the business. But all things being equal, it's just been a long, strange trip, man. And we'll see what happens with it. But I've got no day-to-day with it. I am chairman of the board.
That's a crazy story. I mean,
yeah,
not many people have owned the same domain multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Ain't that the truth? Yep.
Yeah. All right. And I'm curious to learn more about what you are doing with all the stuff regarding podcasts. I know that you have a conference, which I would love to hear more on, and then also just learn more about your podcast, because I know you have two of them.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I actually did my first podcast in 2009. That's when we first did, that was our first episode of Reinvention Radio. So it was 2009, and took some time off, little ebb, little flow. And then since 2015, I've been doing Reinvention Radio pretty consistently. And that's a fun show for me. We bring on people who are dismantling the status quo, people who have reinvented their lives. Maybe they were doing X, and which is like maybe they were a lawyer and now they're raising zebra in Africa or something, right? Like crazy.
I used to be a high frequency trader and gave up all of that to be an entrepreneur. So I've been through that.
Yeah. So there you go. So you'd make for a perfect guest on the show. And so that's the kind of people, and the stories are crazy, man. I mean, like some are business stories, some are personal stories. Like, I mean, just, it's really fun to sit down with people, both famous and not, to hear how they've reinvented their lives over the years.
Yeah.
And the common thread really is they're all up to amazing things now. So it's not like they just gave up on that and now they're not doing anything. Like they're just
they made a shitty decision and now they just regret everything.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh man, my life. So that's always a lot of fun. And then we launched a new show called Beyond 8 Figures. And on that show, we sit down with entrepreneurs who have either exited for more than $10 million or currently run businesses that gross more than $10 million annually. And we get to the bottom of the tools and shortcuts and strategies and so on that they leverage to either start or scale or exit, from their businesses. So that's been super cool. I mean, we just had a billionaire on last week. We've had other billionaires on. I mean, like, it's just the people that have been on that show are insane in terms of their stories and what they've been able to accomplish. So what we found though is that the demand for people to be guests on our shows, it's really, really strong. I mean, and don't get me wrong, our shows, we're not Joe Rogan, we don't have 30 million downloads a freaking month, right? So we're not one of those shows. I mean, we do okay. We're kind of hanging around the top 200, top 300 shows in our categories pretty typically, but we're not top 10. But still, we get 100 applications a month.
Wow.
To be on our shows, right? Wow. So lots of people want to be on. And as I was talking to more and more of my podcaster friends, a lot of them were really just in the same boat. Like they were just getting inundated with applications, right? So it seemed like there was an interesting opportunity to connect shows with guests. And for us, it's really hard to see on a piece of paper what somebody's going to be like. On the surface, they sound really good, and then you bring people on, they're just duds, right? So, and we only do 50 or so episodes a year. So we don't really have the luxury of just swinging and missing too often. So how do you find really good guests? So that was our conundrum. And then for the guests, how do you get these bookings on top shows? So that's really how the idea for the new media summit was born, which is let's bring in 40 top podcasters who are all looking for really great guests for their shows. And let's give 150 attendees the opportunity to really learn how to leverage and monetize the power of new media and give them all the microphones. So at different points during the conference, they can all take center stage to pitch everyone on who they are and what they do and literally get booked on the spot. So it's just a really unique event. I mean, there are no iron curtains, no VIPs, all the icons of influence, as we call them, the podcasters, they hang out, we all eat together, learn together, break bread together, dance together. And by the time you get out of there after 3 days, you've got darn near 200 real relationships developed with people because you know everybody in the room.
Super smart. And then I guess not just the attendees are getting booked, but I'm guessing that the people that are the ones running the podcast are also getting on each other's shows as well.
Absolutely. So that works two ways. I mean, of course, they're booking each other on their shows, and we do a mastermind on the fourth day. That's not for the general audience, but it is just for the podcaster. So we do a mastermind on that last day there, the fourth day, not open to the public again, just for the icons. But a lot of folks book each other on those shows. But what's really interesting is of the 150 people that we attract, and we sell out, this next one will be our fifth one. We sell it out every time. The people that come to the summit are icons in their own rights. I mean, a lot of them have their own podcasts. A lot of them have their own social media followings, their own blogs, their own video channels, etc. So yeah, everybody is really looking for great people to feature on their platforms, and we live stream the whole event for free. So you've got thousands of people on the live stream too who are, booking people left, right, and center also.
Super smart. Yeah, I'm definitely coming. I've been speaking with someone on your team. What are the dates of the summit again?
So the next one is September 16th through the 18th in San Diego. And I want to say at this point, we've got like 20 seats left. So we tend to sell out fairly quickly when we announce the new dates, just because it's built up a pretty good reputation, not only because the promise of the event is solid, where people get booked on shows, right? I mean, we have a 100% track record of people coming to the event and leaving with bookings in hand. Yeah. But most people get booked on like 15 to 25, visibility, 15 to 25 visibility opportunities, whether it's a podcast or a blog or a video channel or whatever it might be. So it's a very unique, and I've been going to conferences and hosting my own conferences for years. And I really try to combine a lot of the things that I know work really, really well and a lot of things that I love into this conference. And I think we've accomplished a lot of really good stuff there.
Yeah. And for me, I have my new book come up for air coming out around that time. So it's a really smart strategy to go to something like that and get on a bunch of podcasts from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, a lot of authors I know actually are doing that now in terms of not only coming to the summit, but just podcast tours in general, right? As opposed to the old-fashioned book tour going store to store to store. You sit on that nice chair with your nice sculpture in the background, and you get people to buy your book, man, right? So that's the idea there. But podcast tours for authors, it's a very real thing.
Yeah, podcasts. So my company, Leverage, we do tasks and projects, marketing, admin, operations, and we've been getting more and more podcasts as projects that people are requesting, and we're now rolling out a podcast package. It's not live yet, but we've had so much demand randomly for just podcast production. I'm curious to know, from your opinion, what are some of the secrets to someone having a successful podcast? What separates kind of the people that are breaking into that top few hundred like yourself versus, the tens of thousands that aren't?
Yeah. So two different questions there. Let me start with the second question, which is you're not going to break into the top 100. I mean, just the odds of that happening without gaming the system today are really, 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 really slim, because you've got NPR and ESPN and Will Ferrell and, all these, guys and gals with huge platforms just driving traffic from one platform to the other. Really hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the days of just launching a show and having millions of people tune in, those days are unfortunately behind us. Now, that's not to say that you can't create a really great show that answers your first question, which is more in terms of what I look at podcasting. I don't look at podcasting as a business, but I do look at what I call the business of podcasting. And one of the earlier icons who came to the New Media Summit, his name's Jeremy Slate, super nice guy. He's actually coming out with a course called The Business of Podcasting, and I haven't yet bitch slapped him on that, but that's a whole other discussion. But he
has a business wasn't he running a business that like places people on podcasts? Or
he was, yeah, he was. I don't even know if he's still doing that anymore, but he is coming out with a course called The Business of Podcasting, which can't trademark words, but there you go. So, reality is I liken podcasting to having access to thousands of free stages, right? So if you're a guest on a show, you literally have access to thousands of free stages. If you have your own show, it's literally like putting on an event every single week or every other day or whatever it might be, where you have 50 or 100 or 150 or however many people end up listening to your show every single day. You've got, that you have this captive audience. And so what I believe is that your best bet today, and this is what we teach. So we've got a year-long program called Icon Maker. And in our Icon Maker program, what we teach is that the first thing that you need to do is really to create a brand, right? So whatever that brand is going to be, that brand. So for example, I'm coming out with a new program called Closing from the Stage. So Closing from the Stage is the brand. Closing from the Stage is also going to be the name of the podcast. So I will release a podcast called Closing from the Stage. And we'll sit down with people and they'll share their secrets and tips and strategies and shortcuts, et cetera, for what they do when they enroll from the stage, right? And that's also, as I said, the name of the course. So what I believe is that the people who listen to your show need to be as perfect a fit for whatever the products, programs, and services are that you're enrolling people into as humanly possible. So who's going to listen to a show called Closing from the Stage?
People that are speakers.
And people who want to improve their ratio of enrolling people from the stage, their closing ratio, right? So I don't care if 1,000 downloads happen an episode. That's if cool. 50 downloads happen per episode and 10 of those people enroll in the $2,000 program, and then 2 of those people enroll in something else after that, and so on, it's a winner, right?
It's quality, not quantity, right?
Exactly. So that's the answer to your question. Is the more niche specific you get today, as a mere mortal who doesn't have 100 million followers on Instagram, right? I mean, I barely have 1,000 followers on Instagram.
Loser.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. But I'm not a social media. I just don't do it.
I don't either.
I'll post something every now and again, but it's just not. It's not where I focus my efforts. But people who have that big following that then launch a podcast, well, they can be in pretty good shape. And that's why it's a little bit of a cart and a horse. But if you're just thinking about podcasting, think about it from the standpoint of the business of podcasting and not podcasting as a business.
Super interesting. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously covered a lot of ground, a few different places, right? So we talked about what is your what and grabbing a free copy of that New York Times bestseller. So whatisyourwhat.com. If you're thinking about being a guest on shows and maybe you want to dip your toe in the podcasting waters, so to speak, we give away something called the Ultimate Directory of Podcasters, which contains detailed contact information for 670 top podcasters, detailed descriptions, their email address, even the whole 9, right? And there's no better way to get massive visibility quickly than to end up, appearing on other people's shows. So maybe grab a copy of the Ultimate Directory of Podcasters.
Where do you get that directory?
Yeah, at myultimatedirectory.com. So myultimatedirectory.com. And then if you wanted to join us at a future New Media Summit, just Google New Media Summit, and we'd love to have you there.
And I'm going to come, so you can see me there as well. Thank you very much for joining today. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Leverage Podcast. Leverage is an on-demand outsourcing platform that helps small business owners and entrepreneurs scale their business. We have a team of experts that can help set up marketing and sales funnels, email marketing, podcasts, social media, paid media, and much more. Grow your business overnight with a team of experts you can trust to deliver. Accomplish more. Visit getleveraged.com.